we need to take steps to ensure
Both Perry and Assad are muted.
has this been going on all along, or shall we start, Nicole, or shall I start over?
Okay.
Have I
Are
been-
you all
No,
hearing me
Azad,
now?
it's only when I pressed recording. I'm sorry.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Perry, can you go back to the previous slide?
Sure. Okay, hold on. I'm trying to, but it's not allowing me. Just on. Let me just stop share. I'll just start over the presentation again. Start over the presentation from beginning. Okay. Right.
Can you go back? Okay, yeah. Can you stop at this slide here, please? Yeah.
This one? Good. Okay.
Yeah. So basically, I have said some of the things on this one, but it's important to understand that the agencies in the region, because most of them are small and the populations of the country are small, tend to have limited institutional capacity to do a range of things which this project tries to address. And that is to improve stakeholder engagement, to deal with effective resource allocation, and to collect and analyze information that will support enhanced planning and management of our coastal settlements, especially related to climate change and disaster resilience. Next slide, please. All right, so the overall project, the overall objective of the project, the sort of end objective, is to have climate smart and resilient coastal settlements in the Caribbean region. And the specific objectives of this particular project are to make use of the increasing amount of digital and modeling technologies that are available on the global technological shelf, and to adapt these types of technologies to support the adaptation and the use of these technologies in our agencies. So it is not about creating new technologies. Very rarely it will be about that. More so it will be about harnessing. That is why the name of the project is harnessing. Harnessing and adapting existing technologies to the conditions, technical requirements, the technical limitations, the institutional capacity, the legal restrictions, etc., is to harness these technologies, adapt them, and implement them within agencies responsible for planning and management of coastal communities in the CARIFORUM countries. Now, this does not only include state agencies, it can include private sector agencies, consulting agencies, technical agencies, universities, any agency that is located within the CARIFORUM region that engages in planning and management or related activities of coastal settlements. Next slide, please, Barry. So what are the expected outputs? Well, one is modeling and digital technologies that are replicable first, that are institutionalizable and implementable and sustainable first at the local level, and then hopefully replicable at the regional level. It doesn't have to be first regionally replicable. That is an added objective. It must first be sustainable and usable at the national level. And then these technologies, with the digital and modeling technology, such as remote data collection, analysis, modeling, groundwater modeling, a range of different digital technologies. So these are actually embedded or sustainable within the agencies for which they are developed. In other words, we don't want technologies that cannot be utilized on an ongoing basis once they've been developed. And to ensure that such technologies are usable, like I said before, we want to be sure that there are policy frameworks and legal frameworks that promote and support innovations of the type we're talking about, but promote and support innovations generally in the planning and management of coastal settlements. Next slide, please. All right. So this is the third call. We've had a brief call, which I will discuss later, at the pilot stage when we were trying to figure out how best to go about implementing the project. And then we have a second call, which we have learned a lot more again from, and we're in the process of evaluating the second call. I can't give the final outcome of the second call as yet. And this is a third call, and it basically conforms to most of the existing application form, budgets, logical framework, all the components that are required in the guidelines for the first two calls. But this particular call, because it is a slightly shorter period than the other calls, which is, it is not for a full 2 years, it's for a year and a half, the budget framework is between 200 to 300,000 euros. Now, this is the contribution of the project with funds from the European Union and the ACP to the project. There are no formal requirements of co-financing as we've had in previous EU projects. There are co-financing requirements by the overall project to the ACP EU, and therefore we are requesting that any potential grantees also try to review and see if it's possible to make in-kind or voluntary co-financing contributions to the project. All right, we'll provide further details on that in the presentation and answer queries in the question and answer period. Next slide, please. So I don't want to go through detail from the pilot phase, which we have lessons. As you will see, most of the applicants had the capacity to implement. Most of the actions were feasibility. I think we were a little bit new in working through the innovation potential of the projects, and the sustainability mechanisms were reasonably well proposed in the projects. Next slide, please, Perry. Right. Now, the critical problem with the applicants in the first project was not the technical feasibility or the suitability of the projects to the requirements that we are trying, or the objectives we're trying to achieve. The critical shortcoming on these projects were really on providing the evidence that the EU and the ACP wants, and we support, that generically that the people who are successful have the capacity, a proven capacity to implement such projects, so that we are sure that the funds will be utilized properly within the time frame, right? And the critical issue that has been requested is within the last few years that the applicants provide evidence of having implemented at least 2 research and innovation projects of a particular value, and that is 75,000 euros. Now, I don't want to go through with you, but we have in the guidelines and the call some specific definitional things about what is research and what is innovation. And we expect that in preparing proposals and in us evaluating the proposals or evaluation criteria, we look to see how well the projects meet the research and innovation requirements of the overall project, right? Just one final note on the eligible projects. They don't have to be completely research and innovation projects. They can have various elements in it, but they must not be either a consulting or a capacity building project. There must be reasonable and substantial elements of research and innovation within the projects that are proposed as demonstrating experience, even though I want to repeat, they don't have to be purely a research and innovation project. They can have procurement and capacity building elements, but they must have demonstrate substantial elements that prove the capacity of the applying institution to undertake such projects. Next slide, please, Barry. All right, so that is what I was just saying, that they don't all have to be completely R&I projects, but there's need for you to explain in the R&I projects that are being put forward as both experience as well as in the project which you're proposing, the specific R&I elements. And to support these, we would like to see contract donor letters, letters of closure of projects, evaluation reports, if there are anything of that sort. And as we say here, because that has been a major stumbling block, not the technical viability or the suitability of the projects, we really want you, as soon as you start to do the projects, to start to collect and collate this information. And Perry will spend a little more time on that and start to send that information to us so we could start the process of reviewing it, working with you to ensure that it meets the criteria, and if necessary, engage with our colleagues at the Technical Advisory Unit and at the OACPS to verify that the projects proposed meet the requirements of eligibility for the project. So what we're going to have right now is we're going to have a presentation of the guidelines, but I would see if there are any pressing questions. I'll be more than happy to take them before we proceed to the next element. Please just put up your hand if you have any pressing issues. Otherwise, we move on to the next segment.
Okay. Before I start, I'd like to encourage everybody who hasn't already done so. Could you please put your name? Okay. I'm Perry Poehler, and I am the project manager of Hit Research Caribbean. So I just want to run through a bit on the guidelines and the application form for the third call. Now, the presentation outline is as such. We're going to look at the eligibility criteria. We're going to talk about the application form itself. We'll discuss how to structure the budget. We'll say a little something about the logical framework. We'll mention the rationale behind the stakeholder report. We'll indicate why we need to send in the declaration of honor. I will explain how the proposals that you send in will be evaluated, and I'll give you a general overview of the timelines. Eligibility criteria. The organization must be a registered entity in a CARIFORUM country. Now, the CARIFORUM countries mentioned here are not overseas territories of European countries. The BVI, for example, is not eligible because it's an overseas territory. So we're focusing on the independent CARIFORUM countries, and they're listed here, right? And as I iterated, and as I will continue to iterate, the requirements for the R&I projects are the major stumbling blocks. So we would want
Gayadin, welke slide is dat weer?
the period that we're talking about is 2018 to 2022.
Oh.
However, we are in discussion with
Water quality knowing review.
Can
Oké, even nagaan.
Sir Kuso, your mic is on. Can you please switch off your mic?
Those
Correct.
shifts, right? So we will keep you informed of any shifts. Now, you also will need to be responsible for the preparation and management of the activities being funded. So it's basically eligibility criteria. From what we have in the document here at the moment, and the TA, you could advise that demonstrates that they conduct some level of research. So you can, private companies do it, universities do it, research institutions do it, NGOs, government agencies, and government ministries. They all have some research elements. They all do some research, so they are eligible as lead applicants. Now, if I have Femia asking a question, Femia?
Real quick. I see that the eligibility of the entity has to be established since 2017. Our ministry exists since 2020. Is it possible that we can work with another entity on this? That we can partner with another entity on this project?
Yes, you can partner with another entity, but the organization that is submitting the application should any change to that. I'm hopeful that the TAU could intervene and let us know. But as far as we're aware, you can partner.
Perry,
But there
we're
needs to
losing
be
you, we're losing you. We're
Okay,
losing you.
okay.
And I would like to quickly address the question from Suriname.
Sure.
Governments change the structure of their administrative portfolios on a regular basis, with restructuring of ministries and so on. I suspect that if the Ministry of Public Works or the Public Works section was part of a previous ministry, we could get clarification from the OACPS on this. But I suspect that there would be continuity of the similar functions within the departments within that ministry. So it's not to say as if it is a completely new ministry with a completely new function starting. So even though it was only, there was a shift in the structure of the ministries after the election in 2020, I know this particular ministry that has been applying, I've worked with them on various iterations and various forms over a long period of time. We'll have to get clarity on that, but I suspect that there will be continuity in government ministries.
Yeah. Before I let Simone in, I just wanted to add to that. Based on the previous slide, the organization, in order to demonstrate that you had the two R&I projects, you would have had to receive the funds and manage the funds, right? That's the critical part, not just implementing the project, but you would have had to receive and manage the funds in order for it to qualify that you have managed R&I projects. So Simone, you want to jump in?
Yes, thank you very much. I have a question about eligibility in terms of country. So I am from Italy and the organization I work for is established in the UK. Can we be co-applicant with an organization established in one of the countries you listed before?
Okay.
Simone, let me answer that, Perry, because I know the organization that Simone is part of. Simone, you all have worked with many governments and agencies in the region. You all cannot be the lead applicant. you will have to find one of the governments or ministries that you all have been providing services for, and they will have to be the key applicant.
Right.
I know you all work collaboratively with them, but you all, it is possible within the project for the agencies, the government agencies, to have not a co-applicant, but to have provide technical support and services from agencies like yourself. All right.
Okay. Right.
So you all will have to have a contractual relationship with the eligible applicant. And I know you all worked with various governments in the region. That is where you probably will have to seek the eligible applicant from.
Yeah, so let me
Okay.
just add to
Great.
that.
Thank you very much.
You could be listed as a co-applicant, but in the write-up of the project, you all have to be contracted. There has to be a clear contract with deliverables, timelines, outputs, etc. It has to be placed as you all are a subcontract, right? And there
Okay.
needs to be justification why you bring value to the project that cannot be obtained from a regional organization, right? So all
Understand.
that is
Okay.
okay. So I see
Okay.
Mark Bino's hand up. Mark,
Thank you.
you want to come in?
Yes, thanks, Perry, and thanks again for inviting us to participate. I have two quick questions, similar to the question raised by Simone, because within the region, we have been working with a consortium known as the Climate Studies Group that includes UE, but it also includes a partnership with INSMET out of Cuba. Should the center be the lead agency, would it preclude us from having as a participant Cuba? That's
Look,
my
Mark,
first question.
Mark, you all will be perfectly eligible on your own rights as a regional organization that works in and registers and works in the region. And I know that you all will have the eligible projects. So you all can be the applicant, and having worked with UWI, who is the lead, or with Cuba will not exclude you from being an applicant for a project. But the area of application must be in one of the CARIFORUM countries listed.
Correct.
Of course.
Yeah, I do want to say, let me check on the eligibility of Cuba, right? I don't know it offhand, but I know some countries are not allowed to participate in certain calls. So let me do a check and inquire just to make sure. But on the surface, it may not be a problem.
Mark was not asking if Cuba could be a co-applicant. All he's saying is they have worked in Cuba, the 5Cs worked in Cuba, right? I said that will not, and they worked in many other countries in the region that are not full members of the CARIFORUM countries. But I told them the project has to be in CARIFORUM, mainly in CARIFORUM countries, and they are registered, they're a CARIFORUM entity, so they will be eligible.
Yes, because I think 5Cs is registered in Belize, so
correct.
It shouldn't be a problem.
Correct. And my second question had to do with, are we looking for a discrete project, or could it be part of a larger initiative, given the size or the quantum of funds available for this effort?
This is a very interesting question, Mark, because we would be very happy if there was a project under this call here that was tied into other ongoing initiatives being undertaken by the 5Cs, because it would help to make this particular element around digital technologies and modeling and so on, both embedded and sustainable. And it is not just a standalone element, but is embedded in many of the other activities that you all do at the 5Cs. But the individual elements must meet the criteria of this project. So if it has additional, it is part of a larger set of parallel projects, that'll be good and not just acceptable, but good. But this individual element must have some standalone elements that we could evaluate and make sure is meeting this particular project requirements.
And if it is that the other parallel projects can offer co-financing, that will also be looked upon. We'll be very grateful for that.
I didn't mention that element, Perry.
Okay. Okay, any other questions at the moment? Okay, so I'll continue with the presentation.
Perry,
No.
there's just one other point I'd like to make.
Okay.
We've discussed this in the past, and is related to what Mark was saying, a question Mark was asking. There's nothing in our guidelines that restricts applicants from making only one application. In other words, you can have two projects. You could apply for two projects that may be related or not related. And we will evaluate each one of them individually once the entity making the application is eligible.
Okay, so now in terms of the co-applicants, right? Oh, sorry, the lead does not necessarily have to be the technical lead. Once the lead demonstrates that it is eligible, that is, it's registered in a CARIFORUM country, it's a legal entity, it has the 2 RNI projects, and it's prepared and managed projects. They can have the co-applicants bring the technical elements of it, right? So that's pretty important. So you know, so do keep that into consideration. Next slide. I'm trying to move on to the next slide. Stuck a little bit. I'm just going to reload the presentation. Okay, right. So co-applicants are not lead applicants and do not need to submit eligibility documents, right? So like I said, the burden, as far as we're aware at this moment, does still fall upon the lead. And as I mentioned, if the TAU wants to jump in at this point to clarify this, I would be grateful. But at the moment, the burden, it does fall on the lead applicant to demonstrate all these requirements. Now, as we mentioned, you can get services from CARIFORUM and non-CARIFORUM countries, but you do need to have it specified in a contract when you're writing up the project. So that, in other words, it falls under line 6, other in the budget, but I will get to that. Now, to demonstrate the things that we were asking for, these are the documents we want. We want a certificate of incorporation or another official document that will show that your legal status and you've been around since 2017, right? Now, if you have a board of directors or you need or an organogram or something official to just show the structure of your organization or something that makes mention of it, right? You need certified audited financial statements for the last 2 years in the name of the organization. If you know that is a requirement, and we don't always get the most recent, but do try your best to get the most recent. We need a letter from whoever from your organization.
Perry, can I just intervene here, Perry?
Sure.
I know that government ministries don't have individual audited statements. So we've encountered that there are various other types of approaches which are taken with respect to a government ministry. An agency may have that within it, but not a government ministry. So we'll have to discuss that separately.
Yeah, that is something that could be discussed, and we could probably work around that requirement for ministries. Now, you need a letter from your organization stating that they're directly responsible for the preparation and management of the activities that are presented in the proposal. And then we will provide you with a draft declaration of honor, right? And I'll go into more detail on that. And you need certification letters, donor letters, that demonstrate that funds have been provided to you as the applicant, and that you completed the project successfully, and that the projects are in excess of 75,000 and are within the time frame. Right? And you also need your internal documents to show that you've managed and implemented these two projects. So we're talking about contracts, and we'll also require a write-up explaining the R&I aspects of each project, because we need to put that into the report, and we need you to specify, when in your summary, what makes this project innovative. So if we do provide the opportunity for you to send us certain documents early, because you will benefit from us working on it with you. And we can then send these documents off to the technical assistance unit for them to look at and let us know if anything is wrong. So the certification of incorporation, that's very basic. If you could send us that early. The donor letters, if you can get that from the donor, that will be great. The signed project contract and the write-up, right? And you saw a definition of innovation, research and innovation in Azad's presentation. We really want you to bring out and tell us what is new about this project, what is innovative, right? Don't just give us back the aims and objectives of the project, which a lot of people have done in the past. Tell us if a new methodology is being utilized, if you've tweaked the methodology, if this is the first time this sort of project is being done in the country or the region, if a new technology is being used. That is what we're looking for when we talk about the write-up. Very quickly, any questions at this point? Okay, no questions. We'll just move on to the next slide. I have to start and re-share again. Okay, right. Now the application form. Now, many of you who have gotten the application form will realize we have a slight error on the application form. The guidelines say 1.5 years and 200,000 to 300,000 euros. The application form says something slightly different. We'll send you a revised application form, but we'll go with what the guidelines are saying, right? 1.5 years, 2,000 to 3,000, 100,000 euro. Now, we have about 7 areas that we're looking at in the application form. Now, in the summary of the project, we want to get a gist of what, what the project is at a glance. If I just want to look at that, I should have an idea of what the project is. And the information on it, we'll be asking you to state your outputs and when we think it's going to be completed, because we have an electronic monitoring system. We're going to put the outputs in there and the date you said that how you think it'll be completed, and it will allow us to have discussions with you if it is that you're not meeting the deadlines or so on and so forth. So that's why we have that in the summary. All right. Now, the second part is the competence. Now, we want to know a little history about the lead organization. So do state in there that when it was formed, what its mandate is, do give a little information on the lead applicant. And also, if you have the co-applicants and they're bringing technical expertise to it, give a little write-up on those co-applicants so that we can see at a glance that, yes, clearly the combination of people here or the individual organization has the capacity to implement this project, right? And then the same thing I'm asking for you all to provide me early, a description of the two RNI projects. I need to know the name of it. I need to know the period in which it operated. I need to know the cost. If you have a website associated with it, great. And I need 2 or 3 paragraphs explaining to me why this project is innovative. Okay. You are, the same thing I was saying, something you need to demonstrate everything that we're asking for you in the eligibility. The thing about it, the 2007, the organization needs to be around. It should be in that section, okay? In terms of relevance, we want to know that you have identified what the problem is. Now, we don't want just 1 or 2 line statements and generalizations. This really should be backed up by proper scientific evidence, right? It's not just we think, so if do look at the literature, do provide a solid explanation on what the problem is. And in your solution, which is the gist of your project, do explain why you think your project will be able to address this problem, and why do you think it's better than other solutions that are out there. You need to go to that higher level when you are providing an explanation. Don't just say that, okay, our project will solve it, and ignore that there are other entities out there trying to solve the same problem. Look at them, explain why the others are working or not working, and why yours is better. We would want you to look at the impacts on the coastal settlements. It's easy to find projects sometimes that deal with whole countries, but we really want you to emphasize the coastal settlements in your project, right? So it could deal with the whole country, but to make the effort to emphasize coastal settlements. And then we'll also want to see how your project aligns with the Sustainable Development Goals, the new urban agendas, or even plans and policies within the country or the region. Link it back to show that, yes, there is some strategic direction that we're lining our work up with. In terms of methodology, we would
Perry,
want
can I
to see
provide before you go on, can I provide 2 quick clarification points? Perry has talked about the innovativeness of the project. Now, it is perfectly legitimate that a project that may have been applied in other parts of the Caribbean has not been utilized in a particular country because of certain reasons. And if the project can find a way to implement the project and overcome some of those difficulties and make it useful in a particular national context, it may provide lessons of how other countries which are having similar problems are overcoming it. So it doesn't have to be an absolute unique innovation. It can be an innovation in application as well in a particular country or in a particular context. It can be overcoming some institutional, some previous data collection and storage elements, some previous technical limitations, and so on, that provides useful lessons for its embedding in a particular agency or similar agencies in other parts of the Caribbean. So while we do want it to show uniqueness in innovation as far as possible, that itself qualifies as a unique type of innovation. That's one element. So the second one is, we have been having ongoing discussions with the TAU on the timelines for eligibility of projects. And we are aware that there are projects that have been slowed down that may have started and the timelines have varied because of COVID or other reasons. our recent discussions with the TAU, and perhaps later on they can discuss this. If there is an ongoing larger project, a multi-year project that is completed by the end of this year or next year, and it meets all the other criteria but is not as yet completed, once it meets the other criteria, it could be considered as well as one of the projects. Perry, go ahead. Sorry about, I want to just add the clarity at this point.
Okay, no problem. Okay, methodology. In terms of this, we want to see very concise and cohesive methodology. So if you state what your objectives are, we want to see that there's a clear linkage between what you're saying that you're going to do and the outputs, the activities, and how it's going to impact the target groups and final beneficiaries. We want to see that clear logical chain, right? We want as much as possible smart indicators. We understand that some things are qualitative, but if we try your best to provide as quantitative measures as you could, and even qualitative things can be measured, so that we could allow for monitoring of the project, right? Now, we also want some realistic cost. Now, if anything you're purchasing is above 5,000 euro, we are asking that you contact me as and provide an explanation of why it's needed. But you have to justify it in your project, sorry. And we will have to just verify and get that approved, right? So that's something to look at. So also in realistic cost, make sure that your activities align with your budget. Don't say you're going to do workshops and you have no resources for workshops, you know? Or don't put in activities in the budget and there are no activities to match, you know? Make sure there's a good match between the budget and what you're writing. The Gantt chart is something, be realistic about it. We actually give you a lot of space for the Gantt chart. It's not part of the 4 pages. You can go to town and explain, you know, your timelines, you know, so that we're very clear how you're going to run the project. And this is particularly important as this is 1.5 years. Make sure that your project becomes realistic. A smaller project that is manageable is better than a large unwieldy project that cannot be implemented in 1.5 years. So keep that in consideration, that timelines are going to be extremely important. Also, we're coming to the end of by the time your project is finished, we're coming to the end of our program. So we have to be wrapping up the whole project. So do take that into consideration, that we may not be able to give you extensions of time and so on and so forth. So whatever you do, make it realistic. Innovation potential, I think Azad already mentioned something on that. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to create the next innovation on the light bulb, right? But you know, we do want you to demonstrate some newness. Whether it's a new technology, it's new to the Caribbean, it's adapted to local context, it uses ideas and concepts from different disciplines. We leave it open for you, right? So you could also find what you think is new, right? We also want to know, as I mentioned earlier, similar attempts to solve the problem and why your project is an improvement. We also want to know the barriers that you predict you might face, you know? So if we are not saying that write a project that expects change in a law, but you might need, let's say, a policymaker to kind of be on your side, and that could be a barrier. So, you know, think about the realistic barriers that you're going to face and let us know how you intend to address it, right? in terms of knowledge transfer, this is within the project. This is within the life of the project. So are you going to be talking to your target group and stakeholders? Are you going to have some training with them? You know, and we also have to think about who is going to be implementing the outputs of the project, you know? So we, you know, if the target groups and final beneficiaries are involved, it's really good. And we also have to think about who is the technology going to be transferred to at the end of the project. So for example, you may be a research institution, but a ministry or some agency may have to carry it on after this project is done. How are you getting it to them? Are they an integral part of the process? Have they agreed that they will take over this project and they will put resources into it to continue to grow it? We don't want projects that end at the end of the life of the project, you know? So that's really important. And that also delves over into sustainability. In terms of we're thinking about the post-funding, who is going to scale it up? Who is going to continue it? We're asking, will you be able to monitor or influence the process? You know, that's important. No, sometimes it'll be out of your hands, but if, for example, you're doing a project that benefits you as an organization, and let's say improves your capacity to do something, well, then you would have the capacity to monitor it. We'd also like to know that if there's the potential for replication in other CARIFORUM countries. Don't just say, yes, it works in Trinidad and it'll work everywhere else. No. For example, a country that doesn't have, let's say, GIS capacity, like Haiti, right, has a unique scenario. You know, Haiti had a challenge during the earthquake, and their GIS capacity was lost, basically. So if your project deals with improving GIS capacity in your country, you know, then it's probably replicable in Haiti. If your country is struggling with water issues, you know, and you can say, okay, this is replicable in Curacao or Barbados, you know, which also has certain issues, or it's in the hurricane belt, you know, or, you know, something. So when you're talking about replication, explain why, you know, don't just say it's replicable. Okay. Then you also want to look at what are the other impacts, the political, economic, financial, environment, and institutional impacts, you know, of your project that could influence whether it's going to be sustainable in the future. So that's the application form. Any questions on the application form? No? Okay, moving on. The budget. Now, I advise you that when you're preparing your budget, go to this link. You just have to type in info euro and you'll get a calculator, which will tell you, which will convert the euros to whatever from your currency to euros, right? Now, that is the EU's standard mechanism. I'm advising you to please use it when you're calculating your budget. Your budgets have to be in euro, okay? Now, we would have sent you all a budget and it had several columns. Now, in columns A to E, you would see something saying units, number of units, unit per value, and total cost. So I'm just using the example of a project manager here. If a project manager is hired, then it's a salary, it will be in months, right? Unless there's a different arrangement, a consultancy or whatever. But in a normal situation like this, it'll be in months. Let's say your project is for 2 years and we say, look, we need 24 months for this person. And the person is per month is 2,000 euro, then the total cost will be 48,000. Now, in columns 5 to 1, we'll look at year 1, right? We'll look at the year 1 value. So in fact, it will be 12 months in year 1 of the same unit value, and your total cost will be 12 by 200, which is 2,400. Okay, So you do the total budget in columns A to E, and then you do the year one budget in columns F to I. The reason we want a year one budget is because we're gonna give you funds in 3 tranches, right? And we would like to be able to give you, I don't think we may be able to give you the whole of the first year tranche upfront, but once we have the resources, we would like to know how much you need in the first year, right? So that's why it's important to also do that year one budget. Now, in terms of the justification, on the second tab of the budget, we really do need to know, if you're asking for project manager, what does the project manager do, right? And the cost, justify what the cost is. Even though you may have the figure in the first page, you still should really explain it in more detail. So for example, the cost of this project manager is based on, so we have it, UE's rate for project managers is 2,000. So that's where we got the figure from. We didn't pull it out of the air. Or if somebody is working for a salary, we're saying, okay, well, it's based on the person's salary, So, and this is the calculation, how I got this figure, because it's not always immediately clear from the budget, it's always good to have the calculation in the justification. At least I find so. It's easier for me. So we're moving on to any questions on the budget? Or before I leave the budget, as mentioned, if you're contracting any services, right, which don't put it on the human resource line, put it under 6 other, right? So if you're offering a contract to someone, put it under the line 6 other and spell it out there. And that is especially important for co-applicants who are not from the region. Your figures, your calculation and figures need to be a contract under 6 other. In terms of logical frameworks, as I said, we do want to, the example we give will give you, your outputs and objectives and aims, but then it leaves space for your indicators. How are you going to measure this, right? And then we're asking for baseline value. For example, what if something does not exist in the year your project started, you put 0. If something does exist and your project aims to improve it, put the value that you think it is and where your value is going to reach at the end of the project and the year you think it's going to complete. In terms of the goal, if we consider it as, in the long run post-project, what do you think, if all things considered go your way, what is going to be the ultimate impact of your project? That's your goal, but what your project is going to achieve is your objective, right? So this is where we have to be very, very specific. And in terms of verification, put how are we going to verify that you've reached your target? What are we going to check? And in terms of assumptions, do explain what needs to happen, that will allow for the objectives, for the attainment of everything, for your outputs and things to be achieved. Okay, so at the bottom of the log frame, what we're asking you to do is just quickly organize your main activities in terms of work plan. So you can have a work plan 1, a work plan 2, a work plan 3. Our own, this is an example of what we had. Because we were saying organize the call for proposal, yeah, we need to produce the guidelines, we need to produce a selection report, we need to have the projects, etc. So organize your work in terms of work plans. It just makes it a lot easier. And then summarize your budget, provide your assumptions, and your preconditions. Now, preconditions, for example, is that you're assuming that we're not going to have another pandemic, or that there's not going to be a volcanic eruption or a hurricane hitting the country or political instability, things that you really need to have in place before you, that will not dramatically affect the project. Any questions on logical framework? Okay, moving on. Stakeholder reporting declaration of honor. Now, what you will notice about our program, it's very developmental, right? So we have things where we're asking you to submit documents earlier, right? So we're going to give you feedback. We have the project development, management and evaluation workshop, where we're asking you to provide a draft proposal, which we're going to evaluate and give you feedback, right? So we understand that not all organizations are going to be experts at writing EU projects. So we are helping you to tailor your projects so that they meet the grade that they can go forward and the EU could evaluate, right? So it's capacity building. Similarly, the stakeholder report is an element in it, whereby we're asking you, when you're drafting your report, send it to at least 3 stakeholders. It can be target group, it can be final beneficiary. Get their say on what you're doing, so let them provide some feedback. Now, you don't have to incorporate whatever they say into your proposal, but we want to know that you've actually considered some of their suggestions, and you either take it on board or you don't take it on board, right? But we want to know that it went out there and you've gotten other opinions on it, right? Because you could be conceptualizing a project that has no linkage between your for your target group and final beneficiaries, and that we don't want that. We want to know that your final beneficiaries and target groups actually think this is a worthwhile project, right? Now, the Declaration of Honor is basically a document from the EU. Well, the EU has certain criteria which they exclude certain organizations. For example, if the organization is bankrupt, guilty of misconduct, money laundering, terrorism, etc. All this Declaration of Honor is saying is that we're not involved in any of that, right? We will send you a draft Declaration of Honor. You just have to sign it, providing that you don't fall under any of the categories. We will do a quick check, just making sure that your name is not bad. So we will check it. But yeah, so it's just a matter of signing that Declaration of Honor. Now, you've now submitted the proposal to us, right? You've gone past you've gotten feedback from the PDME workshop. You've done your final submissions to us. We are going to now evaluate. Now, in your guidelines, you have how we score, right? You'll see how many points are allocated to whatever criteria. And let's say you have 20 points, right? We as evaluators are going to look at what you wrote and classify it according to whether it's emerging, developing, proficient, or exemplary, right? And if you're emerging, most you can probably get is you'll be between 1 and 5 marks. If you're exemplary, you're probably going to be between 15 and 20 marks, right? Now, an emerging response is that it's lacking detail. The concepts, you're not showing that you understand the concepts. There's a limited description of the innovation, or you're not justifying it. Now, and something that is exemplary will show that you provide all the required details. You have all the understandings of the concepts without any errors. You described your innovation well. You have very good alignment with theory. Now, we're looking at that for each of the steps. So even when we look at, let's say, competency, we're evaluating competency along these criteria. When we look at innovation, we're doing the same thing. When we're looking at replicability, we're doing the same thing, right? So keep this in mind when you're writing your document, that you need to be as detailed and scientific as possible. Now, we're coming to the timelines. We are, today's clarification session, we are asking that by the 26th of August, do send us your eligibility documents, which is the write-up, the contracts, the donor letters, etc. Now, the reason for that, so this is not a technical proposal. This is just the eligibility documents. And I'll tell you this, the organizations that send us these things early are the more likely ones to succeed, because we're able to correct for things. The others who send me after the deadline, we're scrambling to help them. And it's only because we're taking long with the selection report that they get help at all, right? Now, you may not have that luxury because the timelines are very short. Take advantage of that 26th of August deadline. It could be something minor that excludes you. Your write-up could just be not strong enough, or your project could just be out of the date. And I might ask you to go back and find another project. Take the opportunity to get the feedback, okay? So we also would like your draft proposals in. Now, in terms of the eligibility documents, you can send me that from now. So I'm not actually saying to wait till the 26th. You could send me it tomorrow if you have it, and I'll work with you. But I just have that deadline date there. Now, in terms of the project development and monitoring evaluation workshop, right? As we said, we're going to evaluate the draft proposal. So we're asking you on the 26th of August to also send us that your draft technical submission. It doesn't have to be completed. The parts that we really would like, we would give you feedback, the weaknesses we're going to identify. You will benefit from it. Because to update for email questions, I only have this because sometimes I may need to take a question to the technical assistance unit, and it may take a little while, but generally feel free to send me an email at any point. And if I could respond and help you, great. But if it's something beyond my control after the 23rd, there's no guarantee I might be able to help you. Okay, now the final proposals should be in by the 30th of September. And hopefully it will take us a month to work out whether or not your project is accepted or not accepted by the EU. Now, there's no guarantee that the 25th will be the time, but we're hoping we can get everything done by the 25th. And hopefully we will be again contracting by the 9th of December, right? So that means that we're going to look at your budget again, right? And we're going to say, okay, where's the co-financing? So in the budget section, please specify what is co-financing. So if your budget, we say the limit is 300,000, you can put 400,000 and specify where the co-financing is, okay? So it saves me the problems at the end where I have to now sit down and ask you all, where's the co-financing in this, right? So if you can do it in the beginning, that would be greatly appreciated. It will allow us to get through the contracting phase quicker, right? And if all goes well, on the 1st of January 2023, we will have projects running. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation. Any questions? Okay, I see Mark has raised his hand. Mark?
Just one quick question,
Yeah.
Gary, and thanks again for the presentation. One, on an earlier slide, I can't recall if it was by you or by Assad, indicated an important element is stakeholders consultation.
Mm,
I don't know we have much time, given
Mm.
what you have laid out there. How far are you seeking to go with the stakeholders consultation? Thanks.
Mark,
Okay.
can I respond? Perry, can I start by
Sure,
responding?
sure.
Mark, because your organization is already in the trenches, so to speak, dealing with many of the issues around climate change and disaster management, you may be able to pull on some of the historical frameworks and understandings that you're operating within. All right. But what we're saying is that so that I think for the 5Cs, it may be less of a problem because you all have a very structured process of consultation and dialogue with your stakeholders and members. But what we're saying is that if, when you come up with a particular concept, say, for example, it is to do something that is applicable in one or two of your member countries, you want to test it out there, then you may want to be sure that you had some dialogue with those particular member countries that, yes, it can be utilized here. Yes, it is of need. Yes, some of the data you're looking for will be made available, et cetera, et cetera. So really what we don't want is we don't want you to sit down in an office, and that is not just to you, but to everybody else, come up with a proposal, propose its implementation in a particular context with particular people involved in it, and not have any dialogue with them. And then when you start to implement the project, but we will check on that to see if you've done it. But we wouldn't want a situation where you get the funds, you're ready to roll, and the people you intend to work with have not had some inputs into it. So as much consultation as is possible would be useful.
Yeah, let me just
That's
add to
very
that. The stakeholder form, it's basically what the most we're asking you to do in that one is, especially given that there was COVID, initially we were hoping for national stakeholder consultations before the report. But because of COVID and limitations, we understood that we couldn't be that request so much. All we're really asking you is to send that draft proposal to three people, to three people, targets and final beneficiaries, and get their feedback. That is the most we're going to ask you in that form. Now, and to build on what Azad is saying, if you've already had consultation and such, that goes very well for when you're writing your justification and stuff like that. So, that is useful there. But for the purposes of the stakeholder documentation, you can just send the proposal to three people. Is that okay, Mark?
That's perfect. Perfect. Thanks much.
Okay, any other questions?
Yes, I had a question, Mr.
Okay,
Dr. Pollard. So this is the third call, but the outcome of the second call, is that already announced?
The outcome of this, no, we're still in the process of discussing, of working out with the selection report. We've gotten some feedback from the TAU, but so we're in the process of revising and resubmitting. So the outcome hasn't been submitted as yet. Which organization are you from?
The Ministry of Public Works, Suriname.
Okay. I mean, we could have a chat on that, but we can do that outside of this
Yeah.
forum.
Okay. So basically, for this third call, it has to be a whole new project proposal.
I mean, it can be the same concept, but the key thing I will raise for the ministry here is that the challenge, you have to have received the funds and manage the funds. That is the problem. So you could partner the project that you all submitted before. I mean, it could do with some extra work, but the technical is not a major issue. The major issue is you have to demonstrate that your organization has has received funds, managed these funds from a donor, and implemented the project. And so you all should be thinking about partnering with another organization and let them be the lead. Because
Come in here?
yeah.
Sometimes in government agencies, so I'll just do this as a generic form. Sometimes in government in governments, there are particular ministries that deal and relate to international agencies, like the World Bank or the IDB or the European Union and so on. Say, for example, Ministry of Finance would be one that would liaise there, and they would be the ones who would receive the funds and then disburse the funds. So in that particular case, even though the project may have been managed and executed by a Ministry of Works or a Ministry of Planning, the ministry that would have received the funds would be another ministry. In that particular case, then that particular ministry can be the applicant, and the ministry that did the technical work can be the technical implementing agency of it. Because very often, and I know this is the case in many governments, there's specific ministries that deal with technical cooperation and with financial institutions and so on, and it's not always the implementing agency. So that's one part of the question. So you may need to have as the lead applicant, the actual ministry that received and disbursed the funds. That's one. The second one has to do with the call. It is possible that a technical proposal that was not successful in either call 1 or call 2 can be resubmitted with different eligibility criteria. That is a different applicant and different evidence and so on. But the same technical proposal can be basically the same or modified slightly.
Okay. What I will do is I'll ask the representatives from the Ministry of Public Works and FEMIA to stay on after we've concluded the meeting, and we can have a chat. Okay?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, will do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Are there any questions? Any additional questions? Okay, then can I invite Gerard Van Uden to say a few words?
Thank you very much, Barry, for this presentation, this launch for the third call. Yes, certainly, I could already address a few of the eligibility issues which have been passed, which you have been spoken about in the last the last hour. I will try to go through them. For example, the case of Cuba. Cuba cannot participate in this call as there is a very exceptional relationship between Cuba and the European Union at the current instances. So Cuba cannot participate as an applicant or co-applicant. When you address the issue of resubmission of a proposal was not successful in the previous call of the HIT Reset Caribbean project, then as you already correctly stated, it's indeed possible to resubmit, but you also should understand the reason why your project was not selected. And it goes without saying that you've got to improve your new proposal. When it comes to an applicant submitting more than one proposal, of course, this is allowed, but take into consideration that when in the case more than one proposal also will be selected, that the total sum of grant received cannot be larger than a maximum of 400,000 euro. Again, also, if an institution has changed its name during the course of their existence, take the example of the Suriname Ministry, Indeed, as Assad already has said, it is a continuation of the same ministry, but only under another name. So whatever experiences of the previous or the predecessor of MDW, in this case of Tsunam, has done, this is perfectly fine. Co-financing is not an obligation. And if, for example, you think we need a project with a larger budget, larger than the grant can give to us, feel free to top up with your own contribution. This is not a problem. Where it comes, and this is a discussion which we've had before, where it comes to the proof, the few of the eligibility criteria which have been mentioned by the Hit Reset Caribbean people, when it comes, for instance, to the aspect of proven experiences in research and innovation activities or research innovation projects in the period 2018 until 2022, where each of that research project should have a minimum minimum value of 75,000 euro. This indeed has proven to be an issue so far also in the previous calls. I think we should mention this. And for example, Barry, if you are going to have this meeting with the MPW after this meeting, I would also be pleased to enter that meeting to give some further clarification. But I leave it up to you to say so. But when it comes to the projects with experiences, it must be research and innovation projects. And you have done, there is plenty of research experience among the various countries and among the various institutions in the country. And even if I look at the participant list today, I'm not, how would I say, I'm quite sure that there is this experience of having done research and or innovation projects dealing with the topic we are discussing about in this call. When it comes to proving, of course, how do you prove this? You must have had projects, and these projects should be entities, should be individual contracts between you, or grant contracts, between you and the donor. And with specific conditions, general conditions, with specific terms of reference or description of the action, whatever is being called, this must be proven, and a project starts with a specific date and a project ends with a specific date. These proofs must be submitted. And when we look at the duration of the current projects, because the project is now in its third year of implementation, or sorry, the second year of implementation, yes, the duration of the projects which would like to submit a proposal in the current third call, they can only have a duration of 1.5 years, taking into consideration that the Hit Reset Caribbean project is also going to finance a little afterwards. That's why the project has chosen, but Hit Reset Caribbean has chosen for a duration of 1.5 years. Now, when it comes to the evaluation of these projects, as Barry has already mentioned, you do have the possibility to submit a draft proposal. And this, I think you should use this opportunity in order to make sure you get the right feedback for finalizing your proposal and submit the final proposal. This would, of course, also ease the process of evaluation, and maybe it can accelerate the evaluation process. And maybe you can even start before that. All this, of course, is preliminary, it's a preliminary remark, but could be a possibility. I can only tell you, all people in the Caribbean who are participating in this workshop, in this seminar, please announce this news to others, to other parties who could be interested in participating. It is an enormous good opportunity to do something with respect to the protection, the future protection of these small independent development states lying in the Caribbean. And once let me say one thing again, when it comes to submitting a proposal and you do not think that you fulfill with all the eligibility criteria, feel free to set up a partnership or consortium where the lead applicant does comply with the eligibility criteria as set by the Hit Reset Caribbean project. But that, of course, this lead applicant who then has the correct eligibility criteria should of course also have an important stake in the project. And whereas it comes to the technical components or few of the technical components, of course this can be done by one of the partners. I would certainly advise you to do so in order to make a good chance or a better chance of getting into the possibility of being granted. Thank you, Perry.
Okay. Jared, I do, well, one, you're welcome to stay on and have a chat with the ministry. I think it would be useful for clarification and see how we can move forward with that. I do have a question for you. We've been chatting recently as we've been dealing with the open call about some leeway with respect to the dates of when the R&I projects could fall. Considering that they are oftentimes these projects are multi-year projects. Now, given that the third call is actually starting in 2023, to what extent do we have leeway that if they are submitting research projects that might still be ongoing, that should be closed up? So should they be submitting things that could start in 2018 and close in 2024, for example?
The thing is, it's of course you can have a certain flexibility in the duration of the calls. We do understand that when we mention the period 2018-2022, this means that has a project a certain experience in this time slot. Now, for example, there are projects, for example, who start before 2017 and they finish, for example, in 2019 or 2020 or 2021. It's perfectly fine. At least we can see that they have had experience in this time slot. Now, when it comes to projects which are about to finish in the near future, you mentioned 2023, or even 2024, this can only be taken into consideration if these projects have started a long time ago. That's, for example, not as of 2021 or 2022. No, they should have started already in the beginning of in the period 2018-2022, or even before 2018. Those are the possibilities. But dear potential grant applicants, you, of course, are asked to submit 2 proof of these projects. If you would like to submit more proofs of R&I projects, feel free to do so. And then it's up to the UWI consortium to take out those which really fit well with the eligibility criteria. But again, indeed, a certain flexibility is allowed as long as enough years of the time slot 2018-2022 have been occupied with with implementing a R&I project.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Gerard? Okay, if there are no other questions for Gerard, I would like to invite Nicole to do the closing. Nicole?
Hi, thank you. Good morning. I would like to share my screen, Perry.
Sure.
Thank you. Are you seeing it in full screen mode?
I don't think we're in full screen mode. We're seeing it. Is everybody seeing it?
I'm seeing it fully now.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think I'm seeing it fully now.
Okay, good. Thank you. So good morning, colleagues. I am Dr. Nicole Greenidge, the Disaster Risk Management Specialist at SEDEMA, and we are excited to be a part of this Hit Reset project, which in summary focuses on the use of digital modeling technologies by coastal development agencies and high-level decision makers. The purpose of these technologies is to improve the prediction of the impacts of climate change and disasters from natural hazards and also to improve planning and management of coastal communities in the Caribbean region. Its second objective addresses developing urban planning policies or plans that would provide the enabling environment for the use of these technologies. The outputs of this project are critical to supporting the resilience agenda in the Caribbean region, as articulated in the Caribbean Pathway for Building Resilience, agreed by the heads of government in July 2018, and which was catalyzed by their decision at the 29th Intersessional Meeting to revisit the region's resilience agenda following the unprecedented 2017 hurricane occurrences and impact in the Caribbean region, and the recognition of the region's vulnerability to a variety of hazards. Our region is heavily impacted by disasters. In fact, according to the UN ECLAC, for the period 2000 to 2021, the Caribbean recorded 326 disasters associated with natural hazards, with the highest incidence in 2004 and 2017. We need to be proactive rather than reactive. The State of the Caribbean Climate Report 2020 confirms that all climate parameters are changing. Sea level rise is expected to reach and or exceed 1 meter by the end of the century. Air and sea surface temperatures are trending upwards, and global climate models suggest that the region may be up to 17% drier by the end of the century. The record-breaking 2020 hurricane season and Hurricanes Irma and Maria in 2017 provide insight to the anticipated 80% increase in the frequency of Category 4 and 5 Atlantic hurricanes over the next 80 years. The latter resulted in 226% of GDP losses in Dominica, and in 2019, Hurricane Dorian, the strongest hurricane on record to affect the Bahamas, resulted in 3.4 billion in damages. And it's not only the threat of the hydrometeorological events that we have to plan for, but also seismic events. St. Vincent and the Grenadines continues to grapple with the impact of the eruption of La Soufrière, and there's a complexity that is added from biological threats like COVID-19, and my slide shows other threats and impacts that we have had in this region. Therefore, a comprehensive treatment of the multiple hazards that impact us is needed in order to effectively build resilience. The trend is that damages are exceeding the size of the economy of our states. We are also reminded that the region continues to build potential loss, and these are the disasters that have not yet happened. In fact, disasters are not natural at all. Disasters are the result of our decisions compounded by the exposure to hazards. Evidence shows that whilst the lives lost in disasters is reducing, the losses and damages are increasing. We can change the outcome, and therefore a multi-pronged approach is needed. This Hit Reset project contributes to this change through the use of digital technologies that will improve predictions and improve planning and management of coastal communities in the region. I close with some recommendations from Miku and Barras' 2021 article, Sustainable Development Goal 11 and a New Urban Agenda for Caribbean SIDS, Policy, Practice, and Action. They provide 8 recommendations for our attention in view of the policy and practice context of the Caribbean SIDS in support of SDG 11 on the screen, all of which are applicable to this project, but I'll just highlight 3. And these are: 1, after meeting the basic needs of housing, water, and sanitation, mainstreaming disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation into policy and practice to achieve more resilient urban settlements is the next major priority. And secondly, inclusive urbanization and participatory type integrated spatial planning is needed. Finally, our decision support tools and technologies are required that will expedite the design and delivery of more inclusive, livable, safe, resilient, and sustainable city environments. I encourage you, therefore, to put forward bold and innovative, but practical proposals that meet the objectives of this project, and therefore help us to move the needle in achieving the vision of climate smart and resilient coastal settlements in the Caribbean region. Thank you for listening.
Okay. Thank you, Nicole, for that. I urge you to stay on for to have that discussion with the Ministry of Public Works after. Azad, would you like to make any statements?
No, on behalf of the Hit Reset team, I don't have much to say after Nicole's very excellent closing. We'd like to thank everybody who came and participated in the discussion. And as Nicole said, we look forward to innovative, bold submissions. And as Perry said all along, we stand by in the process of making the application to provide timely and meaningful feedback to facilitate good proposals. The earlier you start to send information to us and ask questions, the earlier we'll be able to provide solutions that hopefully have successful proposals. Thank you very much.